Hello everyone and welcome back. We are here today to talk about the books I read in April. As you may be able to tell, it is no longer the end of April or the beginning of May. We might as well just call it and just change the name of this series to like Better Late Than Never or something like that, because I don't always put out the most prompt or consistent YouTube material, but I read 7 books in April and I do want to talk about them. I want these books to get recognized and I want to tell you what I thought about them. So better late than never, let's just do it. Let's talk about what I read in April, and maybe we will even talk a little bit about May. Clearly we are too far in the month for me to talk about my TBR. And that's a whole nother story because I had a TBR and then I threw it in the trash and then I threw that in the trash and now I'm just doing whatever I want. May has been fun, but it has been unorganized. So let me tell you guys about April, and then maybe we'll touch on some things I'm reading now in May. So I did read 7 books, like I said, and I will give them to you just in no particular order because I don't even remember the order that I read them in. First of all, let's talk about The Shadow Rising. So Shadow Rising is book 4 of Wheel of Time. This was a reread for me. I love The Wheel of Time. I love The Shadow Rising. I loved it the first time I read it, and I loved it even more the second time. Reading Wheel of Time a second time has been very special for me. I have made a decision to put my full series reread on hold, just so I can read some new things that I'm really excited to get to. I do plan to continue to reread the series, but just at a different pace. I was doing 1 book a month, and I think I just kind of forgot how big these books were and how time consuming. And so it kind of felt like my reading plans for the month were being somewhat dictated by this reread. And I just didn't like how that felt. I felt like I was obligated, and no one wants to read something they feel obligated, especially when it's something they love. And I never wanted dread reading to be associated with The Wheel of Time because it is one of my favorite fantasy series. So anyway, all that being said, I did read this in April, and the second time through was just even better than I thought it would be. This book is so good in the second half, and that's kind of what it's known for. But on the reread, on my second read through, I was able to appreciate the first half of this book even more and just pick up little things that are more meaningful later on throughout the series. And I just really enjoyed it through the lens of somebody who knows the full story. So I'm super glad I read this in April, and I am glad that all my friends read it with our reread. And for anyone who's curious, I am still hosting that read along on Mike's Discord. We're doing 1 book a month, and then we have Zoom video conference call discussions afterwards that are always really fun, insightful, and just really rewarding. So even though I'm not committing to continue to read 1 book a month, we are moving forward with that reading schedule, and I'm hanging out in the comments and just, keeping that train moving. So if you'd like to jump in with us, it is currently May, and we're reading Fires of Heaven. The next book I read, again, not in any particular order, but another book I read in April was Dead House Gates. And this is book 2 of Malazan Book of the Fallen. And I liked this book quite a bit. I was a little nervous about it because I liked the first book, Gardens of the Moon. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And then this book was getting a lot of mixed opinions. And I was kind of I was definitely on the caboose end of the Dead House Gates train. So most everybody participating in Mike's read along with this had already read it by the time I started it. So I was kind of caught up in a lot of opinions that I was hearing, and I was almost dreading starting it. So a lot of people either didn't care for it or they liked it, but it took them quite a while to get into it, or they appreciated the book, but it was just mostly the payoff at the end that they loved. I mean, for any of you who don't know, this book has a pretty earth-shattering ending. It'll really mess you up. And so I was going into it just kind of like, am I even going to like this? Am I going to read this whole big book just for the ending? Thankfully, it wasn't that way for me. I actually really liked it. This is my favorite of the 2 I've read so far. I am about a third of the way into the 3rd book right now, and as it stands, this one is my favorite. I liked every storyline except for one, and I found it I liked the pacing of it. There is a lot of traveling in this book, but I liked the characters it focused on, and I felt like it was really good, and it kept me excited to keep going for book 3. Now, the next thing I read is for my little like picture I took at the beginning. I added 2 Dresden File books for the effect of the photo, but I don't have Battleground. So I read Peace Talks and Battleground, and that got me caught up on the Dresden Files. So I don't have Battleground yet in the physical copy because I listened to the audiobooks for Dresden Files because I love Dresden Files and I almost always do audiobooks. But Dresden Files has some of the best audio narration out there. James Marsters does the audiobook narration and he is just absolutely the best. Total masterclass in audiobook narration. So I'm holding up Peace Talks, but I did read both Peace Talks and Battleground back to back. They are split up into 2 volumes, but it's kind of one story, one book. So I read them back to back, and guys, they were so good. I mean, it was just everything had been hyped up to be. It's kind of a culmination of the whole series, just like went to a boiling point in these 2 books, and it was an absolute whirlwind. I think I read these 2 books in I think 3 days because I just couldn't stop. I couldn't put them down. It was way too action-packed and fast-paced. There was no way I could stop reading them. So I was kind of tied to my headphones for 2 or 3 days straight reading Peace Talks and Battlegrounds, and they were awesome. Perfect. So I also read Later by Stephen King. My friend Michelle sent me this book for my birthday, and she sent me several books, which was so awesome. But this was one that was like the perfect size for kind of an in-between book. Because, like I said, I read The Shadow Rising, I read Dead House Gates. I needed something a little smaller. Because even though, like I said, these 2 Dresden books were, I read them quickly, they were still pretty intense, and I wanted something that was just a different pace altogether. So I read Later by Stephen King. This is one of the hard case crime books he's been putting out, and I loved it. It was, something you can read in 2 or 3 settings. It is a grand total of like 260 pages. So yeah, 2 or 3 settings, you can knock this guy out. And I really liked it. It was pretty cool. And it was the first book of his that is this type of style that I've read, and I really enjoyed it. So it has me excited to read like Joyland, and I think it's The Colorado Kid maybe. I'm excited to keep reading these hard case crime books he's doing because this was really fun. Speaking of Stephen King, I also read Misery. Now this is one that if you look on my Goodreads, it looks like I read it over the course of like 3 months. But that's because I was trying to do a buddy read with my brother, and then he kept getting ahead of me and then getting behind me. And so I read the first probably 30 pages over the course of like 2 or 3 months. And then when I finally just decided to read it on my own, because he, like a punk, just finished it without me, without even telling me, I ended up reading the whole thing in like 2 days. Misery is so good, you guys. It has one of the most terrifying human monsters I have ever read. I already knew the story because of the movie and just because of the, the reputation, but experiencing it with the book was a whole different thing. And guys, it was so good. I was so scared and full of just like anticipation and dread for poor Paul in this book. So if you haven't read it, you've got to pick it up. It's not only a Stephen King classic, but it's just, a really good book. And if you're looking for something a little different, like maybe you read a lot of heavy sci-fi or fantasy, like this is a good one to squeeze in. So I'm one of the last people on the planet probably that hasn't read this. But if you haven't, 2 big thumbs up for me. And then I also read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Another one where I was already very familiar with the story, but I had never read the book. And guys, this is pretty short. I think I did do the audiobook, but this book is 220 pages long. I think the audiobook was maybe 5 or 6 hours long, and it was very, very good. I love the storytelling format of this, and this story was not exactly what I expected. I love these classics because the tone is always it seems very, very sad and very melancholy. And just hearing the story from this guy's perspective about the regrets he has and the choices he made. But, you know, I'm not sure if he would have done it differently if given the choice. It was pretty interesting and really a thinker. This is one that afterwards I was like, I enjoyed reading it. I liked the story, but I think what I'm going to get more out of it is the reflection. And sure enough, I really have thought about this book almost every day since I read it, because it kind of has like a moral of the story kind of thing. And that's great. That's what's great about books. So anyway, those are the 7 books I read in April. If I have to pick a winner, so I think The Shadow Rising is one of my favorite books, but I'm not going to count it because it was a reread. So I would say probably, between the Dresden Files and Misery, it's going to be a hard pick, but I will probably pick the 2 Dresden Files books, Peace Talks and Battleground. They were absolute fire. They were fun to read, but I also thought that it was a very satisfying, I don't want to say conclusion because the series isn't over, but it was exactly what I wanted and what was expecting out of that kind of grand finale of all the buildup that's been coming for the last, I think these were books 16 and 17 from the series. And so it is sad to have to be caught up with everybody else and be in the Dresden waiting club. I've never been there before, but now I'm waiting on a Dresden book, but where the story left off was very satisfying and gave me exactly what I wanted. So as far as my favorites for April, I'm going to call it Jim Butcher. Okay, as I mentioned, it is May. It is well into May. So I'm not going to tell you guys what my TBR is because, first of all, if I had shown you what my TBR was supposed to be for May and then what it's ended up looking like, it's just a massive joke. I kind of had a little bit of a reading funk, some frustration, and then I just lost it for a minute and just shredded the whole thing up and was like, you know what? I'm just going to read whatever I feel like. And it has been a very fun month of reading. So what I'm reading right now, I'm not going to tell you everything I've read so far because we'll do that, at the beginning of next month, right? Right? Unless I just do this again. Better late than never, right? The plan is to do the next video of this style at the beginning of next month where we can talk about everything I read in May and what I plan to read in June. But real quick, I will show you what I'm reading right now because I am that obnoxious person that is reading 3 books at once. I am reading Memories of Ice, which is book 3 of Malazan Book of the Fallen. I'm right here. What is that, about a third of the way through? I am at page 335 out of 913. And I'm not going to lie, I'm struggling with this book. I'm struggling to enjoy it. But I am 100% committed to finishing it because I believe in this series and I'm constantly impressed and just blown away by the world that Steve Erickson has created. It is unlike anything I've ever read. And there's so much in here that's interesting to me that I will absolutely see this series through. But I'm not going to lie, I'm struggling to enjoy this book. That happens sometimes, and that's okay. The other book I am reading right now is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I am exactly 100 pages into this book, and I am really loving it. It's sci-fi, and just the imagery that is in my mind while I'm reading this is just absolutely vivid. He is really painting a picture of this crazy sci-fi world, and the characters that are being developed, again, only 100 pages in out of a pretty hefty 800-page book. I already feel really attached to the cast, and we all know that I love me some character-driven fiction. I'm just totally into it so far. I like the characters, I like the world, I like where the story is going. It's a very, very unique storytelling format, and I'm totally digging it. And the other book that I'm reading right now is Volume 1 of the Rhaenyra Revelations, and it's called The Theft of Swords. And it's Volume 1 because it has actually 2 books in it. It has The Crown Conspiracy and Avon Partha. And guys, I read book 1 so quickly, and it was exactly what I needed. It was just fun. It was definitely a good story, kind of a mystery. It kept you guessing. The characters in it are awesome, and I love The friendship between Royce and Hadrian is just everything that was sold to me. It's totally spot on. And is exactly what I needed. I was feeling a little frustrated with the books I was reading, and this was exactly what I needed. Just a total reminder of like what I like about fantasy and what makes fantasy fun. And I don't want to just keep using the word fun because these are good books, guys. Like the world building in this is really cool. There are some different fantasy races besides humans. It has wizards and towers and magical swords, and it has everything that I love about fantasy. And it's just a good like nostalgic reminder of what makes the genre so lovable. Definite thumbs up on this already. Huge recommendation, even though I'm only 1.5 books into this whole series. Michael J. Sullivan killing it with Rhaenyra. I'm absolutely loving it. So that's what I'm doing right now. Right now, like I said, Memories of Ice, Hyperion, Theft of Swords. I'm juggling them, but it feels good. Like it feels right. And I'm having fun, and that was exactly what I wanted to do this month, was just read whatever the heck I felt like and not worry too much about a TBR or a schedule. And it feels good. So what are you guys reading right now? And do you ever do this with your TBR? Do you ever just like work so hard on it and get it all organized and planned out and then just like wake up one morning and rip it up into tiny shreds? I highly recommend it. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I will get the May-June edition of this out a little more timely next time. So like I said, thank you for watching and have fun reading this month.